example here. A raised to 3 times A raised to 4. When you multiply, this is an example of multiplication. Multiplication. Because here we have said when numbers of the same base are multiplied or divided. So let's first look at multiplication. These two, this A represents numbers. Okay, they represent numbers. So where numbers of the same base are the same, you can see here this base A is the same as base A in the second number. Here without, if you are to simplify this, then we'll have A times A times A. If you are to rewrite this number, we will multiply it by A times A times A times A. Okay. A times A times A times the second number A times A times A times A, giving us the total here is, the answer would be A raised to 7. A raised to 7. You can see the first number A is raised to 3. The second number is raised to the power of 4. Then if you are to simplify that, the first number A raised to power 3 will be equal to A times A times A times A. These are 3A's. Then the second number, which is raised to the power of 4, if you are to rewrite it, will be A times A times A times A. That is A 4 times. So when you simplify, when you remove the brackets here, the answer will be A raised to 7. A raised to 7. In the same manner, you may have another expression, multiplication of, say, A to the power of 2 times A to the power of 3. This will be equal to A times A times, this times A times A times A, which will be equal to A to the power of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A to the power of 5. A to the power of 5. Remember here, under the laws of indices, we've indicated that when numbers of the same base are multiplied or divided, the operations are carried out according to certain rules. So in this first case, we will now state the first rule of indices. So the first rule or law of indices, which you can call it rule 1. Rule 1 is add when you are multiplying. Okay, remember we are discussing multiplication. In rule 1, add the indices. When we are multiplying indices, when we are multiplying numbers with the same base, when multiplying numbers with the same base, then add the indices, such that if you have two numbers like A raised to M times A raised to N, then instead of going this long route, you simply take a, which is the base, which is the same base, then you add the indices m plus n, m plus n. This is the first rule, okay, such that in our example here, instead of doing all this multiplication, we would apply the rule by adding the indices, because remember, when numbers of the same basis are multiplied, these numbers have the same base. When multiplying these numbers with the same base, rule number 1, add the indices. So in this case, it will be a raised to 3 plus 4. The indices are 3 and 4, so this would be equal to a raised to 7, as is the case here. When multiplying numbers of the same base, add their indices. In our second case here, the base is a for the first number, the base is a for the second number. They are the same. When you are multiplying numbers with the same base, add their indices. So their indices are 2 plus 3, which is equal to a raised to the power of 5. A raised to the power of 5, which is equal to this a raised to the power of 5. That is rule number 1 when multiplication.